Okay, it is 5:51, we're coming out of executive session. Mr. Lawrence, is there any business we need to conduct as a result of executive session?
No,
Okay,
not at this time.
okay, let's move on to letters and communications to the board. That's a letter from Key-Based Communications.
I have a question for Stephanie on the last one, with the Legion flights. Does any of that tie in with us at all? I mean, the announcement, I saw an article in there, but I didn't mean to ask you that.
Yes, it does not tie into us. Wade and I spoke with the Legion about 2 weeks ago. We are not in this round of
Additional.
additional flights. The main reason for that is the Canadian currency right now. But we are still on the radar for the next round.
That will be next year.
Yeah, next
fall.
year.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but what is positive is Allegiant expanding, buying more aircraft, and, you know, who knows? It would be nice to have that exchange very closer, so that maybe we could entice more of the Canadian travelers to come to our airport. Something we can work on. Anything else regarding communications? No? Approval of board minutes, December 5th, 2019. Is, Dave, you have a chance to look at that?
No, because I'm just reviewing them right now.
Okay, so we can move that on to
Well, it
February's meeting.
had been reviewed by the assistant secretary.
Oh, it has?
Chris had taken a look at them.
Any
closer.
changes?
I think they were fine. Okay.
Okay,
Good. So I would make the motion that we, or move that we accept the board minutes of December 5th.
thank you. Second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Minutes have been accepted. Report from the nominating committee, Mr. King.
Oh, I thought that's what I reported already, we'll do that again, right?
This is what,
Separate corporation.
Separate corporation, okay, so, yes, so the committee does, and we would move for the slate of officers, President Sam Burns.
actually, is it chair? We have to chairperson, right?
Instead of president, chairperson, excuse me, chairperson. So vice chairperson Megan Witten, secretary David King, treasurer Chris Coffin, assistant secretary Chris Coffin, and assistant treasurer David King.
Okay. Name's been placed in motion, is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? Emery, call the roll, please.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Coffin,
Yes.
Mr. Burns,
Yes,
Ms. Whitten. Yes. Motion carried.
thank you. Designation of staff, interim executive director. Is there a motion from anyone?
I would place in, I would propose that Steve Lawrence be named interim executive director.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded, any discussion? Emery, call the roll, please.
Mr. Coffin,
Yes.
Mr. Burns,
Yes,
Ms. Whitten,
Yes.
Mr. King.
Yes.
Motion carried.
let's move on quick before he has a chance to say no.
He doesn't run away with that.
And,
Still here.
I didn't hear he had an opportunity in that.
No,
sort
we
of
didn't give an
scenario.
opportunity.
But we really appreciate you, Steve.
Well, you-
Give me a check. Isn't there another resolution in here somewhere?
Down under
Yeah.
business items in general administration, there's an item that says appointment of interim executive
Yeah.
director.
We should probably talk about, whatever else goes with that. All right, let's go to chief fiscal officer, or I'm sorry, chief financial officer.
I move that we nominate Joseph Russo as the chief financial officer.
For a second,
Second.
any discussion? Anne Marie, call the roll, please.
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Whitten?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Coffin?
Yes,
Motion carried.
Thank you. Other appointments? Our regular council plus, the Volatus Law Firm and our Canadian legal firm. Is there a motion? First, Mr. Fellow, are you still interested in serving?
Sure.
I've only been here 12 years,
12 years?
12,
That's all?
2007.
Cool.
Is there a motion?
I'll move that we appoint Francis Capello, his law firm Capello and Linden, Volatus Law Firm, and Gowron McClure Henderson LLP as counsel.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Anne Marie, call the roll, please.
Ms. Whitten?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Coffin?
yes,
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Legal, newspapers for legal notices, we've used the Watertown Daily Times for several years, I believe. Actually, I don't know what other options make sense. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
I'll second.
Moved, seconded. Any discussion? Anne Marie, call the roll?
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Coffin?
yes,
Mr. Burns?
Yes.
Ms. Whitten?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, banks, we have Community Bank, NA, M&T Bank, NA, which is also, or as Wilmington Trust, Bank of America, Key Bank, Tompkins Trust, and any and other full-service commercial institutions. Is there a motion?
I'll move that list of banks.
Have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Anne Marie, call the roll, please.
Mr. Coffin?
Yes,
Mr. Burns?
Yes,
Ms. Whitten?
Yes.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Motion carried.
thank you. Presentation and reports. We had number 1, committee reports, Personnel Committee.
We met, oh gosh, I don't even remember the date. We met,
December 17th.
thank you. We did have a meeting in December 17th, and we discussed the appointment of the interim executive director primarily. And we all were very grateful for Mr. Lawrence being open to it. You have a lot of history, and you're exceptional with managing your teams and the other staff in this organization, and I think we're all relieved and very confident in your abilities. So we appreciate you being willing and open to that, and I think we're all, the board as an entirety was on board with that decision to nominate you.
Appreciate, thank you for your confidence in me.
we're really delighted that you were game.
Yeah.
Anything else? The Finance Committee?
Well, I think that a report on the finance committee would be, in one sense, primarily for you, but because the three of us were here at the committee, I wonder whether the rest of you would consider what I report, because the numbers, the facts are in the statement. And I will relay a couple of observations and conclusions, and I wonder whether or not they seem appropriate. And I am open to any corrections for instance, Joe, or if you have corrections for me. We queried a number of variations from the budget. They were almost all just cases where grants had not materialized that were budgeted for income, and the expense for the project that would have been covered by the grant also was not covered. We do indeed have some greater loss than we had budgeted. When you look at the statement, including the cost of depreciation, we end up with a loss. On a cash flow basis, we're still in, excuse me, a modestly positive position, because the depreciation itself isn't an immediate cash expense. At the same time, we are not building a cash reserve to replace equipment and so forth, which is what depreciation is intended to recognize. But nevertheless, we are in a slightly improved cash position, and Joe is well aware that that doesn't mean that the bank account is higher, but instead it means that we've paid down some of the accounts payable. And I believe that it's accurate that our accounts payable position is probably in the best position it's been for several years. And we are looking at a budget next year, which I think is more conservatively budgeted on the revenue side. And it still shows either break even or close enough so that perhaps we'll actually generate a little more cash flow next year. So these are things that I find satisfactory as a board member. We discussed refinancing some of the debt that the authority has, because some of our financing that now exists was done at a time when interest rates were higher than they are now. And we've discussed a couple of possibilities, specific possibilities, and I think that those possibilities probably deserve being discussed in executive session, and we don't really, it's not a terribly critical thing. The staff has agreed to look into these things, and at the point that they look into those things and we find out a little bit more about whether or not it's practical for us to refinance some of our debt, then we can discuss it in more detail.
Do we have a general timeline for that, or is it just?
Well, let me ask
When we
Joe and
can.
Steve.
As soon as
whether or not-
possible. We had an ice-breaking meeting with myself and Steve and, what's his name, Roger and Scott. So, we had a conversation with them and talked about some numbers and things of that nature, but, you know, I guess we passed the first hurdle. We got a green check mark for the first hurdle, so we're just supplying them with some more information. And
Well, you use some names, are these the
No,
gentlemen from?
we're still in open session.
That's
Okay,
right. That'd be-
okay, I won't ask any more information. So, I would anticipate that at every monthly meeting, we'll get some report, and probably we will see some progress. You know, there could be a month when we don't, but we'll either advance it toward a yes or a no at some point.
But this is already actively in the process. Okay. That was genuinely my question.
And that's all the information I have. Is there anything else, gentlemen, that you think would be pertinent?
That pretty much sums it up right
Okay,
there. Very well.
great.
Thank you. Do you have any questions for
No,
Chris?
not this one.
Okay, good. Let's go to reports. Income expense report, Joe?
we talked about that in the finance committee meeting. I can go through and say, hey, here's where it is at the end, but, you know, some of the highlights were not so highlights, depending on which way it goes. I mean, all of our border station year-to-date activity is now merged into the bridge, all the revenues and expenses. The budget dollars still sit at the border station for the remainder of the year. Then in 2021, it's all budgeted under the bridge. We had a few one-off expenses. We had an unbudgeted salary expense for the bridge painters of, $13,500. The rest was budgeted. We bought some steel to repair the bridge, which was budgeted. It was $5,000 for salt, and 2 months of maintenance service expense. And we had a little bit of which was about $11,000. And then we had a little bit of prior period credit card fee expense for the bridge. The airport had, their unfavorable variance in ground maintenance. We just bought the icer. It's $11,800 for 6 bags. And then we repaired our snowplow over there. I think it's a 1992 we repaired, right? It cost us like $5,200 to fix that. So, and then just some miscellaneous Garsite invoices. Our advertising expense, the source grant, was paid out, and we're just waiting now for our reimbursement. We also had an out-of-period training expense that was done in May that actually hit in November. The industrial park, pretty, with the incident at Building 11, I mean, we had to do some stuff with roadless carpet, and basically we had to get them in there quickly and turn that around, so it was, almost $11,000 for that. And, rock salt, it's that time of the year. The marine terminal, we reclassed a little bit of equipment rental that was just in different buckets in prior periods. That was about $4,300, and then we had a travel expense for Adam, which was $1,300. Those are kind of the highlights of the variance, the major variances. The one thing I did mention in that finance committee meeting was, even though we're talking about November, at the end of December, our payables were, without question, they were below $1 million, and probably the lowest I didn't go back in time and look, but they're as low as they've ever been, which obviously crushes your cash flow down to nothing, but, we're keeping everybody happy, and people are getting paid, and business goes on as usual, so, how I see it, I go, we're starting to, January probably aren't the best revenue income ones, but we'll get through that, and, we'll be right back on the uphill climb again. It's kind of cyclical with the projects, and then in the spring and the summer, and then, you got the 2 dead months in January, February, similar to the outside weather. So, other than that, I mean, if anybody's got any specific questions, please fire away.
I think that covers it for me.
Okay,
Yep, I'm good.
thank you, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the first traffic report. Steve, do you have that for me?
Just give me a second. Yeah, if you're looking at December, we had 2 storm events in there on the, it might contribute to some of, you see where that, it's down in December for car traffic a little bit, but I know that impacts us. And then, in the holidays, you get, middle of the week rather than a weekend, so it's just, that's like historical stuff that it generally happens when, a holiday falls in the middle of the week. So that explains some of that, but overall, we're still up. And then I think if you notice over on the revenue side, and I don't know, Joe, if I'm reading this right, but we're pretty close to revenue for all of 18-19, is that correct?
Yeah, even though, we had a decrease in December, I mean, obviously
For the total.
with the total increase,
Correct.
That offsets some of the angst and pain.
And we still have 3 months to go.
Right, just looking for all the, any good
Yeah,
news.
certainly shows the impact of the rate increase.
Yeah, and that ultimately, that's what matters. I mean, sure, we'd like it, more traffic, but, that's a positive sign.
Well, I remember when we talked about the increase, that we're looking around 500,000. And even if we go with a low of, let's say, 160,000 for the next 3 months, that's 480,000 right there. So we're pretty close to what we had estimated, so,
Right, that matches up with your expectations.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah, I do see that we dropped down a little over 3.5% for December. I think if I relate it to the airport traffic, weren't we down in December?
We were down some from November, once again. Weather incidents, weather events took that, and then I think with the combination weather and that early morning flight, people are a little bit more reluctant to get on that early morning flight, just because of the weather aspect. And I'm talking with SkyWest to see what we can do to improve that schedule. Although the reason it's so early is for passengers to get to Washington DC to meet their connections. The first large bank of traffic out from DC in the morning.
There's a connection right there. Car traffic is down. I think nobody's surprised with that. All across the northern border, it's my understanding that car traffic is down. All we can do is hope that things improve and the trade between us and Canada, and they use our brakes. But overall, I think we're gonna meet the revenue projection we had for the toll increase, so that's good. Anyone else have any questions regarding the traffic report? Well, we can move on to the airport. Stephanie?
Okay, as you said, traffic was down a little bit from November, still up year over year, December to December. A lot of that had to do with weather events. We had a good run right around Christmas. Things went well there. SkyWest has had some issues in the last couple of weeks with some mechanical issues that have given us some problems. A few other things other than the actual air traffic report. Our parking for December was up. The lot was at about 75%, which is the largest it's ever been, which is great. The valet parking is doing a steady job.
That's the cars that are parked down in the port?
Yes, they're doing steady, working steadily. Unfortunately, the January traffic is down, largely due to those 3 canceled Allegiant flights due to the weather, and flights with SkyWest. Other good news, Hertz Rental Cars, since they've been in the terminal, is doing better and better. They had 50 rentals in the month of December out of the airport, and as of this morning in January, they've had 35.
That's really good.
So it's going up. They can't keep cars in the lot here right now. We're looking at some additional advertising to maybe make it a little bit more lucrative for Hertz Rental Cars.
How about the other rental?
The other rentals are not doing so well. They never did too much, but they're not doing a whole lot right now.
Probably because people are used to the Hertz name.
Well, right.
And the on-site probably,
And they-
do they have cars on site?
They do have cars on site, but they have no attendants on site. So it's a car that is not clean, not cleared off. It's not brought up to the terminal building for you, that kind of thing.
You can reserve Hertz online in
Yes.
Pittsburgh, but I don't know that you can the other ones.
No.
That might be it.
So that's a
You know,
big
if you're
difference.
flying in, you can just book it
Mhm.
online and be done.
Right, right, since it is a national chain.
Right.
And just in other news, we do have a charter flight coming in next Wednesday with the Arizona State hockey team. So if you see an Allegiant aircraft sitting on the ramp, it's not broken down, it's just waiting for the team next week.
Make sure we get pictures of that.
Oh, of course. Any questions?
No, I try to get out as much as I can to the airport. My son likes to go on and watch the planes come and go, and I was amazed, actually, at how well staff is out there. That flight came in and went out, and whether I never thought would happen. And even the MAPCO people, how well they work with everyone else in the parking lot. Things seem to go pretty well out there, so you've certainly done a good job when all your staff that's out there, and they have, so
I have a tremendous staff,
that's good.
they do wonderful work.
I think isn't Powerball up to like 300 million, maybe you should buy a ticket.
Okay. Good advice.
No, no, for the airport. Not in her name, but for the airport.
That's probably about Sam.
And we'll see if they're gonna reimburse you the $2 if it wins.
Yeah, we'll give her luck.
Yeah, and then we'll keep the rest.
Yeah.
It's perfect. I'm in for that.
And we're up over 160,000 since the expansion, is that right? That's good.
I've been hearing a lot of good, just word of mouth about the airport.
Oh, that's good.
I think, first year, it was a little rough, public perception was a little scratchy. I think people are really, starting to warm up to it and things are,
Yes, I think, the public around here is starting to use it and appreciate it. And I think the businesses in this area are seeing some positive results with the airport.
I've heard a lot of good word of mouth about what people have actually taken the flights have experienced, so I think that's
Oh, that's good. Oh, that's really good to hear.
always positive.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yet I'm still amazed at how many people don't know about it. I think that's.
That's true.
That's the amazing thing to me. And so question, we had some, is there advertising still go, I mean, I think it's, that
All spent.
all spent now?
Mm-hmm.
That's too bad, because there's obviously,
There, yes.
Yeah.
you're always telling somebody, they're like, oh, I didn't think about that.
I believe it's been submitted for reimbursement too. So once it's closed out, possibly get another round.
How quick will that turn around, John, any idea?
On the reimbursement part, I don't.
Well, the state
Yeah.
shouldn't be, it's usually a couple weeks of, and now everything, there's two sets, there's a Grants Gateway and there's a Grant Solutions. The Grant Gateway is for the state, Grant Solutions for the feds. Now there's no more paper anything, it's all uploaded to the portals and we have different roles assigned.
Okay.
So actually, for some reason, Steve didn't get a password and a user ID. He's the guy we need to push the button to send it back to the state. So we're gonna find out why he didn't get one. The person I called wasn't there at 5 o'clock, so.
Get him a password. Good, good.
Oh, that's good.
Anything else? The airport? Move on to port activity report, I believe it's also there. Steve, anything?
I'll just take you on the first page, just talk to you a little bit about grain. Adam and I, we set this up kind of on a calendar year rather than our fiscal year.
Mhm.
It's just easier for us for analysis, but you'll see when we compare it to 2018 numbers, the truck receiving is down by 62%. That's not that number is kind of deceiving because really a lot of truck receiving we get from across the river when the plant is down there, they'll send EGGs over here, and sometimes, depends on how long they're down, we'll get a larger amount, and then they'll ship them out locally. So all that does is say that the plant's been running pretty steady over there. That's kind of where our truck receiving, we don't get a lot more other than the DGGs from Greenfield across the way. So that number, it can change depending on what they do, but they'll call ahead, but usually we don't really know. It's kind of things that are either annual maintenance or something like that, and sometimes they can do that without even bringing material or grain over here. You see truck exports up by 6%, that's in line, and then rail reception was up 24%. So it's not great throughput, it's about what we've done in the last 3 years, it's pretty within a percentage, it's kind of representative of the business we do, but there is an increasing cargo volumes on the grain side. And the trucked out number is a good evaluation because everything that comes in must go out. So the outbound is the one that we kind of use as we see business going, so. And like I said, we only use that for the calendar year. And then the other, just below that, is a salt summary. You can see that in the yellow on the very bottom, 53,911 was what we received. The Chilean salt was 21,000, and then the Bay Como was the 32, that's the blue salt. That's all Morton. Right now, all the Chilean salt is gone. That was the kind of orangish brown. And you saw when I think we had some pictures of us just offloading that. And we're slightly out of that 53, we're a little over half gone right now, which I imagine that'll be, it's going pretty steady now. But just in case you're out talking to anybody, there was a rumor going around when that Chilean salt goes, they all thought that was Morton's and they thought we were out of salt. People, I think they expected it all to be either orange or blue. So when the truckers saw that, they went back to the county, and the county's calling up their people, are you guys out of salt? And all that, and we said, no, we only have Morton salt, and we're not even halfway through that. So just if anybody worries, we'll kind of quell that, but that's how it starts. That, we don't think of it, we don't tell every trucker, oh, don't worry about it, but they do it on their own, and they'll go back, well, we just took the last 100 tons from that. And so if you hear something on the street, that's where that all came from. And then the others are just the monthly, and they're rolled into those other numbers that I just talked about.
You think we're running out of salt again this year?
I think so. I know, I just go back to my first year, there was a lot of salt there, and then it was like, if I recall, it was like the third week of January, the weather just was terrible right through the middle of March, and that was one of our first windmill projects, and by April 1st, there was nothing in the port at that time, and we had a lot more, so it could go in a hurry. But I think too, you've got less customers with that, so it's not like you've got a wide base, they'll only take so much, so there could be some left over, but we've changed the storage. Every time we have storage at the end of the month, we get money for that. As the inventory decreases, you get less money, but we're still getting something for that, so.
Any other questions for Steve, item 4? On to the building occupancy report. John?
We have about 22,000 square feet available out of 170,000 square feet, so 87% occupied. In the industrial park, bridge buildings, 100% occupied. We have one company, one office, small office, in the process of moving out, and probably an adjacent tenant we talked to about taking that for a conference room. Fort, we've got about 105,000 square feet out of 148,000, so 29%. And then a few T hangars available.
We have one agenda item today regarding a team hangar, is that correct?
Yes.
A question for John?
John, on your activity report, there was an acronym that I didn't understand. It's CRISI grant. What's that?
That's the Federal Railroad Administration I'm not sure what the acronym to use it, but I refer to it as Chrissy, because it's easy.
Yeah,
But it's for the 800,000 in federal funds to buy equipment at the port, for the railroad operations and port operations. Yep, it's consolidated rail infrastructure or something or other.
sure.
And what's our share?
800,000 with a $200,000 match.
We have to have the 200,000.
Do we?
Do we have it?
I worked very hard to get it to be in-kind services, and they didn't go for that, so it has to be cash, so. My idea was to use some of the state money that you secured, and use that as a priority for the match. That's a good use of those, but you have to work with whatever entity is providing it, so you can use those state
Right.
funds, so it doesn't have to be
Right.
authority funds.
Yeah,
So it seems perfectly reasonable. I mean, I don't know what those funds were intended for, but if it's for port development in general, then that's a pretty easy case to make.
yeah, I don't think it's been defined yet, exactly,
So we would want to put a plug in for that.
yeah.
And they want to help us out too, and it's 800,000 in federal funds,
Yep.
so it's a good investment on their part.
Yes. Well, let's hope we can do that. Good, thank you. Any questions, John? No? No unfinished business? In the regular business items, general administration? Agenda item A1. Resolution is before you, appointment of an interim executive director. What is this? Can you ask a question?
Well, it's clear from our previous action that we're intending to appoint Steve as interim executive director. Is the salary ironed out, and is there an